WrestleTalk!
Well, we're not even halfway through the week of the first tournament. Nailed it. And yet, we might be in the midst of the greatest King of the Ring tournament there has ever been.
By virtue of it just mattering.
Yeah. Listen, it's a low bar.
Yeah.
We're already clearing where we've been for like the last 5 of them.
Yeah.
We're here to discuss. I'm Tempest, that is the truth, Dan Layton, and we're here to review Monday Night Raw from May 6th. 6th?
Yeah.
Not May 6th?
Or the 6th of May, you might say.
Sure, you might. Not 6th of May, that's
May
also
6th.
weird. Or May 6th.
Because of course Americans don't say that. Why do
No.
I keep opening myself up?
I don't know. We are the WrestleTalk Podcast. I am not Luke Owen, DAD. He is off because train strikes do not allow that man to get into work. But you'll have to deal nonetheless. I'm very excited. He gave me a hell of a Raw to talk about.
I know. You really
so
lucked out.
I lucked out here.
75 minutes and 48 seconds of wrestling on this episode of television.
Unprecedented.
Luke would have... His stopwatch would have been broken.
Yeah.
You know.
So, of course, let us know what you think of this King of the Ring tournament and make sure that you like this video and subscribe to the WrestleTalk Podcast channel if you haven't already. Our lead today is this King of the Ring tournament, which should not surprise people because it was the entirety of this episode of Raw pretty much, and that is a very, very good thing. Of course, King and Queen of the Ring have been the focus of this episode of Raw. And there were definitely some highlights to the Queen of the Ring side as well, which we will get to. But it's easy to say this is the best Queen of the Ring tournament there's ever been.
Because it's the second one.
No, it's the first one.
I know.
We don't talk about the Queen's crown.
They're even acknowledging... It's one of that interesting thing where they acknowledge the Queen's crown as like... It was this. Do you know, why do they call it something different or whatever? Like it was this, and it's that thing that they're doing now where they're acknowledging. When they mentioned Kelly being a #1 draft pick on a Backlash. Did you hear this?
No.
So like Bianca Belair joined Becky Lynch and Kelly as the only women to ever be the #1 draft pick. A couple of weeks ago they mentioned Gail Kim winning a world title in a battle royal, and it was like there's making up for past misdeeds, and then there's just saying that random selector draft where Kelly got plucked out of a hat is the same thing as being picked #1.
Yeah.
Do be serious. That said, to try and, legitimize the Queen of the Ring tournament I appreciate that.
Very much so. And again, it's a simple thing, but calling it the Queen of the Ring already puts it much higher in my estimation, because we love the Queen of the Ring. Hi, Alex. The King of the Ring, though, not had the greatest history.
Certainly not.
I am currently in the process of going through lists for the month of May, which will include some King of the Ring topic things. And, oh my goodness, there are not a lot of highlights to pick from.
No.
There are some people that have capitalized on winning the King of the Ring and made that very entertaining in hindsight. But, like, in terms of the tournament, there are not a lot of highlights. You might point to like the Bret Hart one in '93 where he wrestles Mr. Perfect in their SummerSlam rematch. It's really good. Along with Razor Ramon and Bam Bam Bigelow. Good matches. The 2001 tournament's pretty fun. Edge and Kurt Angle. And it's a good show overall. So the feeling's kind of up for it. Even the 2019 tournament, it's a bad time for WWE considering it's like the week before that Hell in a Cell match happens.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of good wrestlers on the roster at that time. It didn't really amount to much afterwards. In fact, it launched the Shorty G character. But there were some good matches. But that's about all you have to pick from if you're looking for good tournaments.
You've got, like, it's also then on the other side of that, you've got it being used as a vehicle. And I think, like, Austin 316 gets lumped in with this. That the King of the Ring was not the vehicle for Austin 316. It just was the space where he went and cut this promo that took on a life of its own. You've then got like 2001 with Kurt Angle's sort of incredible rookie year where he wins everything there is to win except the hardcore title. Or does he win the hardcore title? I don't think he does. I'm pretty sure he doesn't.
I'm not sure.
No, but he gets Eurocontinental, he wins the King of the Ring, and he goes on to win the world title. And then you've got 2002, which was the Brock Lesnar star-making vehicle as well. I think that's a pretty good one. So there's evidence of the mattering. But for all of those, you also have we'll have a network exclusive tournament that finishes with Neville and Barrett. We've got, which, you know, no disrespect to Neville or Barrett, it was a good match, but like it wasn't treated with the...
You can count the number of matches Barrett wins in the rest of his WWE run on like one hand. And
we're going to use it as an excuse to give someone a silly crown and a gimmick. And, you know, so for every... there's a King Mabel and there's a King, you know, King Corbin and all this stuff. So like for every pro, there's also a con. I think it's one of those things that exists in the pantheon of wrestling. King of the Ring as a title. And then, you know.
Yeah. Well, it was one of the big 5 pay-per-views before it got dropped. So it has like, it was during that 90s run, you know, where you've got winners like Triple H and Steve Austin and Bret Hart and, you know, names that fill out a lineage pretty well. But again, not a lot of success in actually making like the tournament good. A lot of the winners are okay at best and really bad at worst. But this tournament, getting to the actual today Monday Night Raw part of this tournament has started off very hot.
Oh my God, it was obscene.
And anybody that would have seen my review in the WrestleTalk news video today will know that I gave this show a 5 out of 5. Not because I think it's a perfectly well-rounded show or that every segment was a hit or anything like that.
Because you're a paid shill, that's why it's okay.
Of course, of course. The check came in this week. But I cannot in good conscience give a show on TV, a TV wrestling show with 2 matches, the quality of Ricochet versus Ilya Dragunov and Sheamus versus Gunther, anything less than a 5 out of 5.
I think it's like it there are places where when we go through the rundown of the whole show where I got cross, like with certain bits of presentation and certain choices that were made. But elsewhere, as cross as I got, part of the reason I got so cross is because they were doing such a phenomenal job of the presentation in other places.
Yes.
And that was in the Dragunov Ricochet match and in the Gunther Sheamus match. This idea that this tournament is not just a thing to do in May.
Yeah.
It's an accolade where the best of the best want to compete, need to compete, feels like there are stakes, feels like they're there to make sure that they're like you know, you've got a Ricochet who's a completely different wrestler to a Gunther, who is a completely different wrestler to Dragunov. They have similarities in other places, but it's the idea that the best in their field come together for this tournament. That's really what you want for a tournament like King of the Ring. Yeah.
This isn't like, you go back again to some of the tournaments of, you know, the days of yore, and...
Who's? It's a preview for a joke.
I was setting you up for it. But like the 08 King of the Ring has Hornswoggle in it, you know? And granted, you kind of play it off because William Regal set that up so he could have an easy trip to the final regardless. But it's very mid-card at best. There's not a lot to it, and that sort of thing kind of goes through the next few tournaments that we have. Again, Wade Barrett wins it. That's not necessarily a bad choice of a winner, but Wade Barrett was someone who was anchored to the mid-card, and then this never helped him escape from that.
Yeah.
This tournament, while they still have people who would be considered mid-card, like a Ricochet or a Kofi Kingston maybe, you still have those guys go out and have a match like Ricochet and Ilya Dragunov had. And you have Kofi Kingston cut a promo like he did on this show, where winning this tournament and getting to face Gunther after what Gunther did to Xavier Woods, how much that means to him. And all of a sudden the presentation of this tournament just goes through the roof compared to, it's a 3-hour Raw, one-night spectacular where you're going to watch a bunch of 5-minute matches and it doesn't really matter who's going to win it. It's night and day from that. And this is why the title of this podcast and this leading topic and such, is this the best King of the Ring tournament ever? Obviously, it's way too early to say. It is the first show.
It's the best first round of
It's the best first
side of the bracket ever.
Absolutely. But I am so invested in how this tournament is going to play out. We'll see how the SmackDown side of things looks. I think Raw's got a bit of an edge on them roster-wise at the moment when it comes to this sort of thing, you know, with your Gunthers, your Dragunovs, etc. But if this is how it's going to be presented, with these, like, Gunther, Sheamus, Dragunov level guys getting to show out, having credible matches, fight as if this is something that you really, really want to win, I don't see how there's any world in which this doesn't end up being the best King of the Ring tournament that we've ever seen.
It's just what, again, presentation. It tells us that it matters, and for so long it didn't, and even when it did, it also didn't in a way. Because the people who won it didn't, as a rule, go on to do amazing things. Some of them did, absolutely. It's not fair to say that they didn't, but sometimes it just was, you know, Edge winning the world title came, or Edge even being in the main event came a good 5 years after he won King of the Ring. You know, Kurt Angle's was an outlier. After Brock Lesnar, they just stopped doing it, and then it became a King of the Ring to be the GM, wasn't it? Or was it a Battle Royal to be the GM when William Regal won it?
It was the latter. He won a Battle Royal. He was the king. He was the king of the I'm going to hide outside the ring and sneak in and eliminate you last.
Which is not as catchy. But yeah, so like, so the way it's being used here, by virtue of telling us a lot of during Gunther's reign, especially when it came to the end of Gunther's Intercontinental title reign, the question was, what do you do next with Gunther? How do you get Gunther to the next level? Well, immediately from the second Gunther said, I'm going to be in that King of the Ring tournament. Oh, great. It matters. He's doing a similar thing here. I'm not putting it all on Gunther's shoulders because there's so much more to... and there's a whole Queen of the Ring tournament as well that needs to feel the same way. But just by virtue of telling us this is what that guy's doing next, makes it mean more. And ultimately, if it means something more to your wrestlers and thus your audience, yeah, it's better than anything. Yeah. You know?
So we had this match. We're going to start with our main event, most high-profile match on the show, because throughout the show you got, you know, an interview backstage with Sheamus where he's talking about how he wants to win this, become a two-time King of the Ring. He hates Gunther, but Gunther hates him even more. Nobody brings this out of him quite like this guy. They had a match at Clash of the Castle. It was a banger. They had a match at WrestleMania. It was a banger. They left out the SmackDown match,
which I also liked.
It was also good.
The ending was amazing.
The weird half tap, not a tap.
That lives rent-free in my head. I love it.
I thought they were going to do that again in this match.
Yeah?
Yeah, when he had the half crab on him, I thought he was going to tap twice, and I'd be like, oh, yeah, that thing, it's paying off almost 2 years later. But Sheamus talks, later Gunther talks, where he says he doesn't care for bangers, he just wants to win, he's going to become the King of the Ring, etc. And then we get our main event match. And it's Gunther and Sheamus. I don't need to tell you what this match looked like.
I mean, yeah, from the second we saw the graphic at Backlash, we knew what was going to happen.
We knew what we were going to get, and it completely delivered on that. They went nuts with chops and everything. The photo has gone around Twitter and everything today where Gunther's got Sheamus in like a chin lock, and they just zoom all the way in on the bright red handprint on Sheamus's back. And like Pat McAfee said on that show, you could count all the digits perfectly. It's a beautiful thing.
Sheamus has posted a picture as well. He's saying specifically there's not going to be a part 4.
Yeah, he's had enough.
He's battered in that. And it's one of those things where there's strong style and then there's beating your mate up. Do you know what I mean?
Well, you know what? For everything I've ever heard about Sheamus as a worker and everything, I think he's getting like...
You can take it.
Well, he's getting like 2 decades worth of receipts all in these matches from Gunther. But Ludwig Kaiser eventually gets ejected from ringside because they tie up Sheamus's knee in the ropes, similar to how they did with Xavier Woods. And Kaiser hits like a drop kick on the outside while Sheamus is trying to free himself, and the referee kind of sees it, but ejects him from ringside. But from that point onward, Sheamus is working basically on one leg. They exchange power bombs. Sheamus hits the high cross, which is like one of the most protected moves in WWE history, because it was Razor Ramon's move, and he never hit it if they were going to kick out. It's really smart, but it's known as like one of those, protected finishers. Kicks out. There's brogue kicks. There's a bunch of like the pumping knee strikes that Sheamus hits, like the half brogue, the brogue knee, I suppose, which doesn't make sense because brogue is a shoe. But anyway, all of this for near falls. It's unbelievable scenes. The crowd is going crazy for this match. This is what they're here for. And eventually Gunther locks in a half crab and Sheamus does not do a double tap. He just actually taps out. And they immediately went off the air because they
used every second.
They were running up against the wall. This was a fantastic main event.
Yeah.
This was a fantastic way to cap off the first show of the King of the Ring. I have nothing but good things to say about it. It's only a shame that like this match is now over and I can't look forward to it. But also, something's telling me that a Gunther Dragunov match might be the Raw final. And that is also very exciting to think about.
Yeah, I think to further the point that I was making earlier on, one of the reasons I loved this match so much is that it was so different to the Ricochet Dragunov match. No less hard hitting in places, but it was exactly what Gunther Sheamus should be.
Yeah, gives you variety,
which is
going to
be so different to like a Gunther Ray or a Gunther Balor or a Gunther Jey or any of the different combinations that it could have been. And I love to piggyback off your point about the Razor Ramon finish that people don't kick out of. I love the fact that there isn't. For me, that's what you should do with a finisher. Are they going to kick out of this? Well, I'm not going to do this move because. We said, was I with you? Was it or another show where they said how many people have you seen kick out of that? And the answer is loads.
Yeah,
right.
I forget what move they were talking.
It was the Cody Cutter.
Yes, it was the Cody Cutter.
Yeah,
you're right in the Carmelo Hayes match.
Yeah, I've seen loads of people kick out of that. I love about Gunther the fact that he doesn't have a finishing move. Gunther can finish you with anything. Like he can crab you. Michael Oku's quaking. Like he can single leg grab you, take you out. He can just give you a lariat, a double power bomb,
a chop.
He could probably just stare too hard at you and I'd tap out, to be honest with you. But like he has all of these different things. With Gunther, it's that I don't know what the closing blow is going to be that almost makes him more dangerous. And it was just a really effective use of that. Kaiser's dropkick to the knee was lovely. The whole business of using Kaiser as a distraction in that way was really nice. Again, Gunther doesn't need that to look threatening, but it's an extra, but it's an extra layer to the character. And I just thought it was exceptional. It was everything I wanted this match to be when I saw that graphic. It wasn't as hard as the Clash of the Castle one. It wasn't for me as tense and exciting as the SmackDown one. I think probably because I knew who was going to win this one.
I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, but it delivered in spades, and it, as you say, capped off what was a show that says this is a bracket to watch and a tournament that you're going to want to watch next week. Ultimately, if you're trying to get people in for next week's Raw, the week after that, and then the pay-per-view, you need to show us why. And the best of the best competing in lots of different styles. That's what King of the Ring is all about.
It is now.
Yeah.
And this makes me excited to like have more King of the Ring tournaments in the future, like a proper bracket tournament with 32 people in it or 16 people or however. It was probably 16. 16 people, 16 of the best workers in WWE going in there and doing that. That's something that if you wanted to make King of the Ring annual again with a mind that can book such a thing and the roster to pull it off, that all of a sudden sounds very appealing.
I think that's the crucial part of it, like a mind and a team who are willing to book this in the correct way, who don't just see it as a thing. Like, there's going to be a point where we stop harping on about the past, but the past was so long and we lived through it so specifically that like we're going to luxuriate in this for a little while. The fact that the person in charge of this tournament. Again, it used to be a thing to do.
Yes.
It's now a key thing to happen.
It has a purpose.
It has a purpose. And the person booking it believes in that purpose probably because he won it and wants it to mean something, in retrospect.
Yeah, screw Money in the Bank. Yeah. Triple H never won that. Yeah. Austin Theory, you can go cash in on the U.S. title and lose. But King of the Ring is sacred.
So it's the same thing. It's just delightful. It's really nice to as I say, there are issues elsewhere. I don't think the Queen of the Ring was booked on the same level. I think naming it Queen of the Ring is one step. I think the way they book specifically Lyra Valkyria, I'm going to go on a rant about that in a little bit. But elsewhere, on this side of the tournament, it was incredibly effective. And yeah, I'm just excited. I think for the longest time lately, I've been waiting for the wheels to start falling off. You know, especially we go into the post-Mania run where it has always felt a little bit bland. They're trying slightly less hard because they're not trying to use that freedom from sports to have all the space on all the eyes on them.
WWE doesn't feel like it gets going again until after the draft rosters lock in.
Yeah.
So that month period after WrestleMania just kind of feels like you're spinning your tires.
I would only say there's one episode of Raw where I've gone, that was a bit bland, and I was cross at that one because the others had been quite good. It does still feel like now is like, yeah, all right, good. And then we're on the road to Clash. And then we're on the road to Money in the Bank, and then it's SummerSlam before you know it. And like, oh, hang on, I'm excited about the next few months. It's a really nice feeling.
Yeah. Boy, it's nice to be excited about wrestling and stuff. What a novel concept. But let us know what you thought about this match in particular, Sheamus versus Gunther, in the comments down below or in the live chat, where our lovely mods and our Ultrachats will bring us through. Speaking of which, of course, let your opinions be known in the Ultrachats, where if you want to have your opinions read out, you can send in your messages to support at WrestleTalk.com at the $5 or above limit, and you will get your comments read out here on the show. So Lobby Warsaw starts us off with our Ultrachat saying, "Loved this Raw. I just wish Triple H didn't feel the need to shoehorn the bigger stars in. Cut the talking segments, add Rey versus Kofi and Shayna versus Zelina to this card, and it's still a perfect show to me. I guess casual audiences want to see big stars, but I don't know." On another more positive note, King of the Ring is shaping up to be the best premium live event card of the year. Liv versus Becky, IC triple threat, Gunther versus AJ or Orton. That's interesting. I'm not sure about that, but we'll get to it. Io versus Tiffany or Naomi at a Cody match, and it's a near flawless card. I'm very excited for this show.
Yeah, I think we'll talk about the segments. Well, I see what you mean with the shoehorning and the bigger stars. There were certainly places where I was like, this needed to be done in a different way.
Yes.
So I completely agree with that one. I do think, though, that what they did do as a result of these segments that I think should have been done a different way, adding the Liv and Becky that match, adding the triple threat Intercontinental title match, the prospect of those and what they might mean going forward, those really excite me. So, you know, it is a sort of win some, lose some situation. And also so if I'm doing my maths right, is it just going to be the final of King of the Ring at King of the Ring?
I believe
or do you think they'll do a final match like they used to?
That's a good. I think it'll just be the finals of both tournaments.
Because if they do, they'd have to. If they're gonna be equal about this, they'd have to do both, which means 6 matches, and that is already too many matches for a Triple H card. So yeah, I think it's gonna be from shows that felt skippable, the Saudi shows.
Right.
If you're gonna do them, at least do them well.
Yeah.
Do you know? And like do a card that works. Having to check my politics at the door and separate how I feel about it from, you know, if you're going to do the show, obviously there's ways we can as a collective, you know, Sammy Casaria and all the rest of it. There's ways that we can do that. But if you're going to do the shows, make them jam hot.
Yeah.
And he's doing that here. And also, I will say though, speaking of that, putting a match like Rey versus Kofi in a house show is really interesting to me. A house show match with stakes like this, is kind of like, if you're trying to encourage people to go to your live shows, that is interesting, especially because they haven't seen the World Championship defended, especially since they haven't necessarily seen the Intercontinental title defended every single time because Gunther's not able to travel abroad, things like that. I do find it interesting to put a match like that on that house show and give you a reason to go.
Kind of reminds me of when they would do Royal Rumble qualifying matches at house shows.
Yeah.
You know, I can kind of see it, but I am also a little annoyed of like what got a lot of time on this show when after seeing the Kofi Kingston promo, for example, I would have really liked to have been able to see that match.
Right.
You know, so
I see that.
I see both sides of it. Also, I just think it's really neat how there are like takes on who we think is going to be in the final, and it might be completely different from somebody else's take.
Yeah.
It's nice to not have like a foregone conclusion as to who's going to win.
Yeah.
You know, there are some options. Matt Hennessy has a long chat, but we thank you for that, Matt. Says this tournament was really good, and this was a great Raw to follow up from Backlash. It does feel like after the draft, last Raw is being presented as the work rate show. It feels very much like Triple H just looks at what he did in NXT and goes, let's do it again. And honestly, I'm fine with that. Triple H knows how to book a good tournament. Look at the Dusty Classic and Cruiserweight Classic and UK title tournament. Personally, I do not mind the DQ and Reed and Gable. It made sense for the match and the characters. Reed beat Sammy before WrestleMania and doesn't have a legit claim to an IC title match. And both Sammy and Chad have got involved in his matches, attacking each. So him attacking both guys makes sense. Chad bitterness to Sammy's success has made him a good heel, and I like there is a feud. Their feud is on site. On site, as in spelled SITE. I was confused. I was like, what website?
Different spelling of words is a pitfall. There are so many.
Where they're so focused on beating each other up, they forget about Reed. Chad caused the DQ last week attacking Sammy, so it makes sense that Sammy would do the same for him. And it shows how honorable Sammy is that he will character. He is the fighting... I'm not sure. But his character is the fighting champion, so much so he wants to fight both guys. He wants to prove he can beat Reed because he hasn't done that yet, and in Chad's case, it's a personal issue. Sami Zayn is the best babyface in wrestling. He's the best. I do really like the idea of you have a really personal issue over here and just a guy who wants your title over here, and it's all kind of getting the same airplay. Like, you have... Both of these are equal parts, having to... occupy space in Sami Zayn's brain.
We'll talk about that when we get there, because there's a lot of things I'd like to say about that.
Absolutely. Will Campbell says, hey guys, thought last night's episode was amazing. Ilya Ricochet was amazing, as was the main event of the night. Gunther versus Sheamus always rules. Also, great to see Natty coming back from NXT to deliver a certified banger on TV. Indeed, we'll get to it. And Blake Whitehouse says, with the SmackDown bracket being announced, as much as we want Gunther in the final, storyline-wise, it makes the most sense for Jey Uso versus Tama Tonga. I don't agree with that. I'm annoyed because that means Tama Tonga has to beat Lashley when it should be Lashley versus Gunther.
So I've just got the brackets up because they were obviously all question marks on Raw last night, so I hadn't seen it till now. So you got Styles versus Orton and Corbin versus Hayes on one side of the SmackDown bracket. You've got LA Knight and Santos Escobar and Lashley and Tama Tonga on the other. Looking at that through, Tama Tonga goes through for me over Lashley. And then again, and if he's in the final, seeing that against like an Orton or a Hayes or a Styles even, I don't know. It's an interesting bracket, the SmackDown one.
It is.
It's far less evident than the Raw one, I think.
Yeah, kind of. I've got my head canon of where I'd like to see this go, and it's different from everything that we've heard in the Ultrachats so far, because I think Gunther's probably going to win the tournament, but I could see a world in which he doesn't, in which Ilya Dragunov makes it to the final, and he could face someone like a Carmelo Hayes, like, major draft pick coming out of SmackDown and the draft and everything. They've got the history from NXT. You can run that back on the main roster, kind of a star-making moment for both guys. I think if I'm looking as a match on one side that would be both like narratively fitting and also excellent, that might be what I go for. Again, Gunther could just go in and win and beat literally anyone on the other side, and it would be a good match.
Yeah.
I do not need to see this be a Bloodline tournament.
No, I think there is a lot you can do with the Bloodline stuff elsewhere. It's an interesting one. I just can't... I'm fascinated by Baron Corbin being there, because if you want to reintroduce Baron Corbin to the audience after what is undoubtedly a massively successful soft reset on NXT, this having him go quite far in the SmackDown side of the tournament could be a real opportunity. That said, I still would have liked him to be on Raw with Bron Breakker. Especially now Bron Breakker's not in that tournament.
You hold that thought, because... We'll get to it. A few more before we move on. Blake Whitehouse, we just got to. Charles Berg has been a member for 35 months in a row. Thank you very much, Charles. My goodness. Sheamus versus Gunther is just full-on physicality, tit-slapping goodness. It's like Tony Storm's here. Hope you're all well. You as well, Charles. And Liam Leonard has been a member for 32 months in a row, saying, great to see FFPW legend Lyra on the main roster. Raw has got a star. And we will get to that as well. Thank you very much, Liam. Double L, Liam Leonard, Whirlipede Gang. Hell yeah. It's a Patreon thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I think good.
Yeah.
I support it.
You're not in it. It's an exclusive club.
Wow.
Anywho, we will now get back to our regularly scheduled Raw, and make sure, of course, that you as well submit your Ultrachats to support at WrestleTalk.com. $5 and above, you'll get your comments read out before the end of the show. So this show opened with the Judgment Day coming out, and Damian Priest quotes Linkin Park, because people in France really like Jey Uso, but in the end, it doesn't even matter.
Nice.
Banger. They hug it out. They all kind of apologize to each other for getting in each other's way, and Priest being pissy at the pay-per-view and such. And then they turn their attention to the King of the Ring, and they say that Drew McIntyre's not going to be in it, so Finn Balor's like, haha, I've got a first-round bye. And he says he's going to go from being the prince to being the king. And then Adam Pearce comes out and he's like, no, that's not how this is going to work, because here is your replacement person. Jey Uso comes out, and Jey Uso and Finn Balor have your first match of the night. It was broadly fine. Not a whole lot to really say about it. Finn Balor cut him off with a punch to the gut, coming off of the ring steps, and then he dumped him over the announce table. And I was very happy about that, because hopefully it would mean that the commentators never, ever, ever, ever say a mouthful of yeet ever again. Ridiculousness. But they battle back and forth. Jey hits a bad-looking spear. I don't like his spear. And they continue to go back and forth, and Drew McIntyre comes to the crowd, hops over the guardrail, and this kind of distracts both men. There's a roll-up, there's a kick-out, and Finn Balor gets distracted, and Jey hits a second spear and gets the win. So he goes off, he's advanced to the second round. Finn Balor's not particularly happy, and Drew McIntyre is lurking.
I was a bit crossed by this segment overall.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, the Judgment Day, will they, won't they, is so tired at this point.
Mm-hmm.
It's been going on since this time last year. Since essentially slightly pre, but especially since Priest won the Money in the Bank, the idea of who has the power, who runs Monday Night Raw. We'll get back to that phrase in a second. But the idea of, like, is there going to be a split? Is there going to be a turn? Is there tension in the Judgment Day? To the point where now I actually really liked, I said on the Backlash review, I really liked Priest's aggression towards Balor, especially the grabbing him by the face kind of thing. It felt like an assertion of dominance. And here, it was like, oh, we'll just go back an extra step, will we? Great. I don't care about it. And also, the character is just empty at the moment. There is nothing for him to work with. This slightly dim lighting Judgment Day thing is now one-dimensional, where in the past it's been many layered, and I've really appreciated it. I've really enjoyed it, and I would be happy to be wrong again. At the moment, it just feels like on a show with other characters that are far more compelling, it's even more evident that this is very one-dimensional here. Yeah. And actually, I would have liked for a little bit of progression. He is the world champion. Why is he apologizing to his lackeys? I was going to bring this up.
Yeah, I must say, Damian Priest really does not feel like the focal point of Raw, like, at all, really.
No.
And I know that doesn't surprise a lot of folks, because there were people who, got their comments off in the months leading up to him winning the world title about whether he should have won Money in the Bank. Doesn't really seem like they have a place for him at the top of the card. Maybe he's not that guy, etc. And now we're like, a month, 6 weeks or so into this, call it an experiment. And he's the opening act on this Raw show, and there's nary a mention of what he's going to be doing next. And I get it, it's like right after the pay-per-view. You maybe don't need to set up the next show like immediately, but he just doesn't feel that important. Yeah. It feels like there's so much else on this show that is more worthy of, either top billing or our attention or anything like that. And going back to your point about it feels one-dimensional because it's been the same ho-hum thing for so long, is I think sometimes certain folks, whether it's fans or people in booking or whatnot, kind of get this kind of twisted, is you look at the really, really good, like, long-term stories that people really, really loved, whether it's in this company or other companies, whether it, Hangman Page and the Elite from a few years ago, or the Bloodline stuff with Sami Zayn. Those things only work if there's progression.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't, you've got the Bloodline stuff that we saw from SummerSlam through the Royal Rumble, where maybe Jimmy Uso and Solo Sikoa have a thing or not, but there's just no progression to keep you interested. There looked to be some progression at Backlash, like you said, but now it doesn't seem like that might be the case.
I think I'm a broken record about this, so I do apologize. But last summer...
It's okay, I'm not here every show.
The SummerSlam business last year, where it was Finn Balor going for the title, he had a compelling story with Seth. It was a new title. There were new... I felt like there was an opportunity to establish it as a prize on a level just beyond it, just a glittery gold belt. Then Priest with the briefcase. Priest winning the briefcase doesn't feel like a star. All right, fine. Well, he doesn't need to be it immediately. But the idea, if you want to build him as a threat and a presence, that was a way to do it. Now that he's got the belt, I mean, elsewhere on the show, his feud appears to be with Carlito.
Yeah.
That's not telling me world champion, other than the fact that he's got the belt around him. And look, I think Priest has... When I watch it's like a dissonance. I watch the Backlash match. I see a guy with a physical imposing presence. I see a style that I love when he's at that press conference with his glasses and his hair. I see him on talk shows and I think, wow, you're a great representative of this company. I think about the aggression he was showing to JD McDonough and Balor, and I'm like, ooh, there's something.
Mm-hmm.
And then this, and it all evaporates, and it's like not working. And then when we followed up by a Jey and a Balor match where, that's not working for me either. Looking at this tournament, Finn Balor versus Ilya Dragunov gives me far more feels than Uso versus Dragunov, and that's not meant to disrespect Jey Uso, but was there an alternative to this? Maybe not. But here we go.
Yeah. I don't want to spend too long on it because, again, this is a 3-hour show and there's a lot to talk about. Things I really want to spend time talking about too. But one of the key talking points of the internet that I've seen over the last week or so has been the idea of, and then the bell rings.
Right.
And the main focus of that conversation has been Jey Uso. And you look at somebody who gets the kind of response that he does, particularly at Backlash and in France, with his, entrance and all the lights. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, that crowd was great anyway, but clearly people are invested in this guy. Mm. But then the bell rings. And it's just, it kind of tops out at okay. And unfortunately for some, you do kind of need to be better than that in order to really reach the tippy top of whatever promotion you're in these days, because the rest of the roster is going to lap you at that point because everyone is so good now. You kind of have to be at a level similar to that if you're hoping to make it through and break through, and I don't know if that's going to happen.
Yeah.
So we move on. Because Drew is walking backstage talking to Adam Pearce, and he's mad. He wants to fight. He's like, I could have wrestled in this thing. And Adam Pearce is like, no. You talk to the doctor. The doctor said you couldn't wrestle. That's the end of it. And he gets in his very nice looking car and he drives away. This is when the QR code pops up. This is your moment for the day. And immediately behind him, CM Punk pulls in like an old car, and he gets out and he's like, where's Drew? And Adam Pearce is like, you just missed him. He's like, what? You're kidding me. Listen, happy to be here. Made it out of the building. I wasn't following any of that stuff. Supposedly he was locked in the building for 2 days or something.
It was fun. I didn't buy it as legit for a second.
No.
But that said, I used to work in the Waterstones in London where someone got locked in for several hours. So that is, they were upstairs. There was an upstairs, a downstairs, and in the ladies' chamber. And they had gone upstairs to browse after not realizing we'd closed the upstairs. So we didn't know that they were there, left, And before you know it, there's a tweet being like, hang on, I'm locked in your shop. And we're like, duh fuck. So it's very, very possible that this did happen. But either way, it was fun. It was nonsense. It was all just a way to keep him in Hartford, Connecticut.
Yeah. And this was also your shot of the week, where everything that I've said, from Drew walking with Pierce all the way to CM Punk telling Pierce to hit his music, and then walking all the way to Gorilla and out to the ring, one shot. This wasn't Sami Zayn going through and everything like that, but it's the production that gets the +1. And also a -1 because he sniped at Jackie Redmond about the Toronto Maple Leafs. Piss off, Phil. Your Blackhawks didn't even make it to the playoffs.
He swipes at about the Maple Leafs, -1, but at Jackie Redmond, so +1.
Yeah.
So it's even.
Yeah. It all equals out. But he goes down to the ring. And now this is where it gets kind of interesting, because Punk cuts this promo, and he says that Drew's left. I'm going to get everybody to pop on Twitter and text him and DM him and whatever to turn his ass around, come back here so we can catch a beating here where Gordie Howe played for the Hartford Whalers. And I'm like, yeah, hockey. Gordie Howe's really good. He's like one of the best players of all time, whatever. He was playing in an era, and he played until he was like in his 50s, to the point that he didn't have to wear a helmet. Because he was grandfathered in. He didn't wear a helmet in his days because it's like old hockey. And then they introduced like everybody's got to wear a helmet now. But he's like, I don't. And they're like, okay, here's 50-something-year-old Gordie Howe skating around with a bunch of these like 20, 30-year-olds with helmets on. It's funny. Hockey. Yeah. There's a dose of me on this
Canadian.
podcast.
So Canadian.
So Drew is not there. And spoiler alert, he doesn't come back at all for the rest of the show. And Pat McAfee literally tweets out like, oh, Drew McIntyre, man's calling you out, whatever. And CM Punk does this promo where it's as if, oh, I'll talk for another 2 minutes longer. Hope he's going to get back, because he says, I'm going to stand here, hold this show hostage until he comes back. And he just like kind of meanders through what he and Drew have done in 2024. He was like, I was in the Rumble, and then he tore my tricep. I was like, yes, we know. This has been reiterated dozens of times by now. And then at WrestleMania, Drew won, and then I beat him up, and he lost the title. I'm like, we know. And he makes a joke about choking someone out in AEW, because Drew McIntyre is supposedly a choke artist, but not like I'm a choke artist. Ha ha, Pat McAfee. And Pat McAfee's like, guillotine choke. Ha ha. Because he's talking about the Jack Perry thing. I thought he was talking about UFC for a moment.
I think I was just... I was having my coffee. I wasn't fully...
Yeah,
I was like, all right. I thought he said joke artist. I was expecting a little stand-up.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, he just goes on, and eventually is just like, yeah, well, I broke your elbow. The next time I see you, I'm going to break your face. And that's the end of the promo.
Yeah.
This was bad.
So I watched this bit I sort of wake up, I watch it for an hour, then I come to the office and I finish it off, which usually doesn't matter too much in the cohesion of the show. This felt like it happened on a completely different episode of Monday Night Raw.
Yeah, a little bit.
You know, it just didn't do anything. Like, I can't really critique it positively or negatively because it just didn't do anything.
It felt like it was building to something that never happened.
And I've liked it. I liked last week's, or the week before, where they were like chasing each other all over the arena.
Yeah.
At least we know Drew McIntyre doesn't pay attention to his phone while he's driving, which means he's a safe driver. Good for you, Drew. Thank you. Be safe out there on the roads.
Like, if this through, like, because Punk's checking his watch, like, every time he, like, tells a month's worth of recap, checks his watch, he's not here yet. And he does it, like, 3 or 4 times, and then it just ends. And if this had gone, like, 2 of those, and then you see, oh, Drew's pulled back into the arena, and, oh, he's coming down, marching, they get ready, and security gets in the way, whatever you want to do. I don't think it's nearly as offensive. But this had the beginning, it had the middle, and it had no ending.
Yeah.
And this was the second segment of the show.
Yeah.
And there was still like 2.5 hours left. Mm-hmm. And we never saw Drew or Punk ever again.
Yeah, it was an ill thought out segment.
This is where when the Ultra Chat comes in and says, I don't appreciate how Triple H needs to get all the top stars on the show. Yeah, you probably want CM Punk on your show, but if this is what CM Punk's going to be doing, I'd rather see Kofi Kingston and Rey Mysterio or Shayna Baszler and Zelina Vega.
I'll give you that because I think if you look at it's there was a more effective way to do this.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they didn't do it.
No.
Maybe if the more effective way happened, I would have rather seen that over the match. But it didn't happen. So, also, he talked bad about the Maple Leafs, which, fair. So then we got the unbelievable pairing of the video package for Ilya Dragunov.
No, we didn't.
That is... After a segment.
How dare you erase Natalya?
No, I saw Ricochet and Ilya Dragunov in my notes and forgot that meant the backstage interview. Because Ricochet is asked about Ilya Dragunov, and he talks about, he's kind of trying to find his place right now, but he's going to win King of the Ring, and Braun Strowman comes in with his cowboy hat. And they hug, they dap each other up and everything. And Braun Strowman gets asked why he decided to take on the Judgment Day, and he's like, I hate bullies. And Judgment Day are bullies, but it's not about me. It's about Ricochet, and he's going to prove to everybody why he's King Ricochet. Go get him, kiddo. And I was like, this is a 35-year-old man. Why are you calling him kiddo? And yeah, that was
great skin.
That was that. Yeah.
Yeah, he looks quite young, does Ricochet?
He's sure
not,
does,
but he looks young.
Yeah.
I mean, he is young. I'm younger than him, so he's young. Because then when I'm his age, I will also be young. He's young, but yes, yeah, it was. I think this might play into something that happens a bit later on. Maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah. Natalya and Io Sky then.
Yeah.
The first match that we got in the Queen of the Ring tournament, and by far the best match in the Queen of the Ring tournament we got on this show. Mm-hmm. This was just a fun little match that went incredibly hard.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I wasn't expecting it necessarily, but I was maybe expecting 4 solid minutes, but they went real hard. Mm-hmm. Like Natty hit this awesome sit out power bomb, and they were just trading shots back and forth. The action was really crisp and kind of what you would expect out of, an Io Sky who's awesome and a Natalya that's motivated and having just wrestled in NXT and kind of feeling herself a little bit. And Natalya goes for a sharpshooter, and Dakota gets on the apron and kind of distracts her, and it allows Io to ultimately reverse the sharpshooter, send Natty into the buckle, run back, hit the double knees, and then hit the moonsault for the win.
Yeah.
Big fan. Big fan of this.
Big fan of this to myself. I feel like I've been on the Natty train for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I think she's great. I think she always has been. I just think there are certain parts of her game that aren't as strong as others. I think she is by far weaker on the microphone than an awful lot of her contemporaries.
Mm-hmm.
However, over the past year or so, she's done a lot of work to try and sort of fix that, right? So she did. I think she did a good promo a couple of weeks ago on NXT. She had a fantastic match on NXT Underground on Spring Break in last week. I was a big fan of it. I think she had a fantastic match with Rhea Ripley for the world title last year. People forget that she's got this in the tank. It's not. I think the frustrating thing about being a fan of Natalya's work for me is that she's always been in the middle. She was never what the pervy old men saw as what they wanted from their women's division back in the noughties. She didn't have the look that they were after, but also she was wrestling better than they were, so she had to sort of dim herself. And now the division has sort of moved away a little bit, so she was always stuck in that kind of middle ground.
Mm-hmm.
But she's always had it. Thinking of the matches she's had with Charlotte, thinking of the matches she's had with Rhea and elsewhere. And then this was another prime example of it. I thought it was tight. I thought it started off great with a little bit of chain wrestling. It felt like over the course of the match, both Io and Natty kind of learned from mistakes that they were making with each other. It felt like two equals wrestling each other, which ultimately is what this kind of tournament should be about.
Mm-hmm.
So I really liked the sort of story they told, that kind of because they had a roll through pin sequence that they were doing, and then Io kind of went to do it again, and that's when Natalya was like, right, I'm going to use your momentum to move you into a sit-out powerbomb, which just looked fantastic.
Yeah.
I was a massive fan of this, and I think Natalya is in the best shape of her career so far. I think she's in the best, and I mean in terms of ring work, not just aesthetics. I want big things for her. I want her to have, I in my head, when I'm fantasy booking anything, I can fantasy book her to a world title, and I recognize for some people that's a bit too far, but whack her in the North American title division in NXT. I think we could have a great time. And I think a lot of because elsewhere on this tournament, on this show, the Queen of the Ring matches were an underdelivery, and I think Natalya is the prime person that these women can work with to improve their game. Io is an example of when you've got that game, you're already there, and this is what's possible. So yeah, big fan of Natalya, big fan of that match. Thought it set the Queen's side of the tournament up quite nicely.
I completely agree. And after the match, Dakota Kai gets on the mic and speaks for Damage Control, saying that Asuka is hurt, which apparently is a shoot. She's hurt. She's not in the tournament. Dakota Kai has taken her place and will face Lyra Valkyria later in the show. And then once they've won Queen of the Ring, they're going to be taking on Becky Lynch because they're going to show who really runs Raw, etc. And then we got the pairing of the video package for Ilya Dragunov that then led right into his match with Ricochet. Now, when I was watching this, because I watched this show live, because I can't be bothered to wake up early, I was watching this match and was making my notes as I was doing it. And I started my notes saying that in an ideal world, this match would have taken place at an NXT TakeOver crowd that was going to adore it and go crazy and, oh my God, all these crazy moves. By the end of this, I had to delete all of that because this isn't NXT. This is WWE Raw. And they went out there with a guy, Ilya Dragunov, who's still relatively unknown to the main event roster. And by the end of this match, nobody was going to be forgetting about Ilya Dragunov. They won this crowd over with a guy they didn't really know that well. And that, to me, is still a commendable performance. Because this match wasn't just unbelievable. This match was so much fun. And like you said, completely different from Gunther and Sheamus. They're kind of working each other through and, grappling and doing little bits here and there. And it's good. But then, Ricochet goes for a moonsault off of the corner. It's like a triangle moonsault. And he misses. And Ilya Dragunov grabs him and hits a belly-to-back suplex that causes Ricochet's body to bounce several inches off the ground that I think caused everyone watching it to all of a sudden lean forward in their chairs a little bit. Because, oh my God, this is where I knew I was going to be watching something special. They get back in the ring. They keep going. Ricochet hits 3 dives, 1 to each corner, the last of which has an incredible camera shot as, far away, like a faraway crane shot as he dives and twists and rotates. And this is where they go to commercials. Really good stuff. They continue, though. It continues to get better. And from this point on, the crowd is into it. They've got the people. And they just start trading near falls and counters to big moves where Ilya Dragunov hits an H-bomb, and that looks to sort of be it, but he's going to keep going. But Ricochet counters one of them into basically a code breaker. Yeah, the recoil. He gets that. That's a near fall. That was really good. Ricochet hits a lion salt. That was really good. Ricochet goes for another springboard moonsault, but Ilya Dragunov catches him with a spinning back fist while he's upside down, much like the Adam Cole super kick from TakeOver Brooklyn 4. And that then allows him to hit another H-bomber. I tell a lie. Can't skip over this. Because Ilya Dragunov managed to both hit a superplex and completely spike himself. And there was heavy debate in the office about whether or not that was intentional.
Yeah. To give himself a little color.
Yeah, give himself some color, make him seem like, oh, he's hard. Yeah. Look at him land on his own head, and he gets up, and he's kind of like holding his head, but he's got wild eyes, his hair is all messed up, and he hits his finish and wins. What a crazy shot. But also, that could have just been it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Scary. But he hits that H-bomber and he gets the win. And after the match, they shake hands.
Yeah.
This would have been enough to make me go like, oh, best tournament ever.
Right, yeah. I mean, I was ecstatic. It was fantastic. I think when you saw Ricochet debut on the Raw... No, Dragunov debut on the Raw after Mania, there was an element of it where it was like, oh, this is the thing that's happening. And it was a perfectly good match with Nakamura or whatever. Did fine. This one felt different. This one felt like this was the debut. This was the introduction. This was the coming out party, as it were, for Ilya Dragunov. Combined with the promo just beforehand that I thought was absolutely exceptional. When sometimes we talk about like video package, give me a video package to introduce the person. If you're going to do one, this is what it should be. It kind of gave you the aesthetic. It kind of gave you the mood. It kind of made him seem like someone who was made of sterner stuff in the way. There's this exercise he does where he like squats on one leg with a gigantic weight and goes up and ow, like I couldn't possibly imagine. So that shows you kind of who this person is. Then the match itself, this is the one where I wrote, this is what a tournament like this should be all about. Like this is the competition. This is back and forth. It's even. It's both of them looking sort of strong. That I love a release German suplex. My favorite move is it's the overhead belly to belly suplex. You know, what I so any variation of that is gonna get me. And then like I fully got into it. I bought the recall near fall. I was like, oh, hang on, are they maybe gonna? And then no, they didn't. And then the thing that really sold it to me was that I was like, Ricochet losing this feels stronger than he did going in.
Yeah.
Do you know? Like, and I know he's a speed champion and everything, but he didn't wear the belt, so that means nothing. When it's a proper contest like this, a loss feels like a victory in some ways. I think wins and losses matter. Wins and losses don't matter is a cliched argument and all that stuff. Ultimately, in a sporting contest, especially in a tournament, someone's going to get knocked out. One of the things that we love in the FA Cup is when one of the lower teams knocks out a team much higher than them. Does that then mean that, like, if let's say a champions side knock out Manchester City because they got lucky on the day or because they managed to get that? It was a 0-0 draw the whole way through, but then they managed to sneak one in before the final whistle. Does that make me think that Man City are less than? No, it doesn't. It just makes it feel almost more impressive that the new and up-and-comer got the job. This was a way of me seeing Dragunov as a force to be reckoned with. And if you are not someone who has seen his work, then what an introduction. I thought it was exceptional.
Yep. This was so good.
Yeah.
I could go on and on and on about it. This is honestly one of my favorite matches I've seen this year. Like, this was phenomenal stuff. We move on, though, because we had the Sheamus backstage promo on Gunther, and then we had Ivy Nile taking on Zoey Stark. And this was... it was difficult. Like, any match that's going to have to follow that last one was gonna struggle. But also, these are not two heavily pushed stars on Raw. It did kind of start looking like there's not, like, they were really kind of missing Asuka in the bottom half of this bracket.
Yeah.
And it was what it was. They still tried their best. I liked a lot of the things that they did in it. I think Ivy Nile hitting a top rope bulldog in this match looked really, really good. It was a really cool looking move. But eventually Zoey hit the Z360. Got the win. It was a fine little match, but it didn't have any heat.
No.
It wasn't going to have heat, especially following the match that we just saw. Was what it was. This is kind of a little bit closer to what I think a first round TV tournament match has been in WWE. And to this point in the show, that was kind of like an outlier a little bit.
It was. It definitely felt like a change of pace. It was a shame. I think both of them are strong. It just didn't connect. I think they were I think it's down to the agenting more than anything else. I think there was a lot of work that was done that left room for it to go wrong or for it to feel uncomfortable. There wasn't so much of a flow as there was elsewhere on the show. I think if they'd have, especially because of what I know the pair of them are capable of, I think if they'd have made it more mat based, and given that they only got 4 minutes or so, if they'd have made it more mat-based and they'd made it more of like a test of strength, like competition, a sort of bruiser competition, rather than going up and doing a big bulldog from the top rope or anything like that. It's again, I go back to it all being about presentation, and this one and the following match both suffered massively from presentation. They kind of feed into each other. We don't know Ivy Nile that well because she hasn't been presented very well. Zoey Stark, did some good work with Trish Stratus, great matches with Becky Lynch. Since then has kind of just been floating around in the tag division, except for that time she got the challenge at Survivor Series, which itself was good, but nothing to write home about. So I feel like in terms of presentation, what reason do we have to buy into it? So when you have that opportunity, go back to basics and show us what we have to get invested in.
Yeah.
You know, I think that was a shame.
Yeah. R-Truth is backstage and thinks the NCAA is a wrestling promotion. He wants to face the whole UConn Huskies basketball team. The Miz is like, Truth, they're a basketball team. You can't do that. They've got the coach there, the UConn Huskies. Cool. Comedy.
I wrote, I bet that was dead funny in America.
If it was, I couldn't tell you.
Wanting to play the devil's advocate or whatever, if this was in the UK and it was like, oh my god, there's Graham Potter, the football manager, I would have been like, ha, that's quite funny. But I don't know who this person is, so I didn't get it.
That's fair. But they are kind of the point that you can pull from this is that Miz tells Adam Pearce that he'll get back to him on what we should do for the next tag title defense.
And I will say here, it's quite nice that Adam Pearce is doing his whole bloody women thing, but with R-Truth now. Yeah. Because there was a while there, a several month stretch where Adam Pearce would basically get henpecked by the women and say he needed a drink. Yeah. Nice that he's just an alcoholic. He's not a misogynist. He's just an alcoholic.
But I say that's the interesting bit to pull from this, because the same segment, Adam Pearce is then interrupted by Bron Breakker, who is upset with not being in the King of the Ring.
And I think, really interestingly, justifiably so.
Absolutely.
He's been drafted from SmackDown, where he may have been in the contendership. So why have you brought me here and not put me in the King of the Ring? I thought that was very nice.
Particularly considering a spot came available today and he didn't think of him first.
I didn't even think of that.
Yep. So, what I think could be interesting here, given what happens on SmackDown, we'll see. Baron Corbin goes out in the first round. We've heard a little bit of talk that there are still sort of plans of doing trades. I think you could see Baron Corbin end up on Raw in the very near future. And this tag title thing that, we'll get back to on who we're to defend these titles against. Baron Corbin and Bron Breakker.
It's interesting because they made a point of saying the roster's lock as of today, yesterday.
None of that means nothing.
No, I know it doesn't, but if you want, you need to start trying to establish.
Yes, I agree.
There's almost something in the idea of I've had to make a few changes to the roster, so before the roster's officially locked, can we do a little trade? And then with Ricochet and Braun Strowman, the tag division on Raw kind of is a little bit limp and bare at the moment.
Sure is. When they've broken up Imperium.
Half of them got drafted over to SmackDown. So now what we've got... Oh, wait, the New Catch Republic on Raw now?
Yes.
So we've got New Catch Republic. Ricochet and Braun Strowman feel pretty nailed on. They're back together. I liked them very much as a pair. I'd like to see them get back together. I'm all about wolf dogs.
Yeah.
I think that'd be great.
I am as well. I'm really hoping that ends up being the case.
Yeah.
Judgment Day is backstage. They're upset about having lost to Jey Uso, and Dominic Mysterio walks in with Carlito. So the thing I liked about this is Priest comes over and he's like, hey, I don't like you. I remember what you did last year at Backlash. You cost me my moment with Bad Bunny, the whole deal, and I like that continuity is adhered to. That is a huge step forward compared to the days of yesteryear where Nakamura and Corbin wrestled 5 out of 6 SmackDowns in a row because they couldn't remember if it happened the week before. So that's good. The downside of this is that Carlito says, Priest is kind of blowing him off. He's like, I don't care if you got problems with Rey Mysterio. I don't want to see you. Get out of my face. Beat it. Talks to him in Spanish. And Carlito just says, hey, I'll scratch my back, you'll scratch yours. Let's do each other a favor in some way. So I think this could probably see Rey Mysterio getting beat in the house show tournament match, for example. Something like that, a way to get him out of the tournament. But the problem with this is that this is what the world champion's doing on this show.
Yes, I agree with that.
Feels very unimportant. Might not last very long. That ultimately probably is fine. Look, if you want him to be important, you got to treat him like he's important. He didn't feel important on the show.
If it brings me a Priest Mysterio match at King of the Ring, all right, we'll talk about it.
Sure.
But at the moment, it didn't give me anything.
Yeah. Next up, we had our non-tournament match of the evening, which was Chad Gable versus Bronson Reed. And they didn't get very far into this match. They did some stuff. They had a lot of chops in the early going, and then Bronson Reed hit like a Death Valley driver out of nowhere, like a minute in. Something about that just made me go like, that was a finisher once, But they go back and forth, and they hit like a back superplex, and then Sami Zayn hits the ring. And it's a DQ, the match is waved off, and they all kind of trade stretches where they're on top and they're fighting against each other. But eventually Bronson Reed stands tall, hits both of them with Uranagis, and walks out. It's kind of the same of what we've seen already, with the exception of Adam Pearce waiting in Gorilla being like, I can't have this. You guys are ruining my show. And Reed just says, listen, if you want order, you know what to do. Just give him an Intercontinental title shot. That's what he wants. So I like the direction we're heading in here. I like the presentation of one is a personal issue, one's a professional issue. I like all of that. It didn't feel like a whole lot progressed on this show. It was kind of just like, we need to get them all on the show, so let's do a quick 3-minute match ending in DQ. Bit lame. That's kind of all I had.
Yeah, it's a bit pedestrian. I completely agree with that. Yeah. What's not pedestrian for me is where I want the thing to go.
Yes,
I think I figured out last week. I was saying on the show, I was a bit confused and conflicted in my feelings in a good way. In that I liked the Gable heel turn,
yes,
but not at the expense of my Alpha Academy. And I refer to them like that because I got so attached to them during the Viking period last year, and the way that like Maxie, I've never seen a suplex mean so much. Do you know what I mean? When she did that suplex, it felt great.
Yeah, the Ocean Cyclone suplex.
No, not that one. When she did a literal vertical suplex.
Oh, never mind.
So it was when they were training her, and this is how you take a suplex. You pop the hips and you do all this stuff, and then she did one, and she went from having never wrestled at all to doing a suplex perfectly. And I was like, and I think like everyone in the crowd did as well. The Alpha Academy have such a nice place in my soul, so I was like, I don't know what I don't want them to turn on Gable, but I don't want this heel turn to not happen either. I don't know what to do with that. And then I had an epiphany on the way home, and I voice noted Luke about it. And what it is that I ultimately want is friendship. I want Alpha Academy to help Chad Gable find himself again. I want Chad Gable to commit to this heel turn, but I want the heel turn to not be what ultimately gets Chad Gable the Intercontinental title.
Sure.
I want eventually for it to almost be like a reverse. I want Chad Gable to be Intercontinental champ. I want him to win it off Sami Zayn. I want it to be a reverse Rocky thing. I assume, haven't seen Rocky, I mean Sami Zayn Rocky. I want it to be that the Alpha Academy train Gable to get back to who he is. To remember, you don't need to be this person. You can be good. You're our coach Gable. And then ultimately it's and Sami Zayn is like, I always knew the real Chad was in there. And it could be a nice emotional story, and his daughter's crying, and it'll be beautiful in hospital, whatever. That's just my little fantasy pitch. That's how I want this storyline to go. And part of the way to get there is having him be close again in this triple threat match. In my head, it's Gable holding Bronson Reed in the ankle lock, and he's really got it, and actually you believe he could do it, and then out of nowhere comes that haluva kick, job done, he's lost again kind of thing. I'm really excited to watch this match play out on the pay-per-view. We do have like 3 weeks until then, so I don't really know what they're going to do with the story to stop it feeling pedestrian, to your point, but I like the destination.
Well, we can't do what you just did because you just ripped off the entire plot of Rocky VII, Adrian's Revenge.
Wouldn't know.
That's a Simpsons reference. But no, I'm with you.
I haven't seen Rocky and I don't watch The Simpsons. So.
Yeah, madness. They recapped Lyra Valkyria getting drafted to Raw. Gunther did his backstage promo about bangers. And then we got Becky Lynch coming down to the ring for an in-ring sit-down interview with Michael Cole. Yep. So, I'm not a fan of one Michael Cole. I know that's becoming a less popular opinion as the days and weeks and years roll by and all that, but, I'm stuck in my ways, and it's not saying that he can't have a good call. WrestleMania when Cody wins the title. It's very, very good, etc. He has his good moments. However, I have a disdain for WWE talk show segments.
Yeah.
And that might be because I had to sit through the entire run of happy talk, which I never need to hear referenced ever again. But I don't really care for the KO show or the Grace Waller effect or whatever. If it's not Piper's Pit, I don't need to see it. Maybe a Jericho highlight reel back in the day. That's about it. I super do not need to see Michael Cole talking to Becky Lynch about the hat she wore at the Kentucky Derby.
Bitch, Michael Cole talking about fashion on the night of the Met Gala. Are you joking me? That hat was fire. I love Beth and Seth and Becky's outfits anyway. I'm a big fan. We know this. But what are you talking about, Soul Patch?
Yeah.
Wind your neck in.
This was a boring segment anyway.
It was a boring segment anyway. Can I tell you how to make it better? Because
Absolutely.
I completely agree with your point about in-ring talk show segments. They just don't work for me. And I think a large part of the reason is because, especially in the way that these wrestlers are trained, they're trained to give space and allow the crowd to respond, and they're listening for like various things. Like there was a Becky chant, so that idea that people hate Becky now is terminally online people rather than the actuality of what's going on. But they're trained to give it space, and as a result it can feel kind of awkward, and there's just people talking and like, oh, I'm gonna go and get a beer now, do you want one, kind of thing. That energy is coming from the crowd, so like it just feels baggy, loose. It's difficult to get that level of intensity. I find it incredibly boring and quite uncomfortable. Not necessarily the substance of what she was saying. I like that she did that thing that I always say that she do, which is to try and put over the rest of the roster. She talked about Alba Fire and Isla Dawn and gave us talked about Alba Fire holding the NXT UK belt for ages.
Where were they in this tournament?
Where are they in this tournament? I mean, this is it. Like she's putting everyone. She's trying to like help lift everyone up. But then we get to talking about basically nothing, and I think, why can't we do this backstage? Why can't it be like, I had this conversation with Becky earlier on in the day, and it be, or even like backstage Baron Saxon or Jackie Redmond or any of them are talking. Like I think of the one that started off the Sami Zayn Rocky thing where he's in the stands with Jackie Redmond. That was a great segment.
Yeah. Why
can't we do things like that are more energetic, that are more impassioned, that don't have that baggy room that makes them feel uncomfortable? It's like watching improv that's not connecting.
Yeah.
And you can still achieve the other things they wanted to achieve, getting Liv a match, by doing it in a backstage segment. The art of the backstage segment has kind of been lost. I know we have backstage segments, but there is something about the Austin Rock promo, or even the Triple H I Am the Game promo, that was so good.
Yeah.
We need to find that little soupçon again, I think.
No, I completely agree. And that's the thing, where Michael Cole can do a good segment when he is backstage, sat down in an edited format, where you can cut out all the bits that didn't land or anything like that, all the dead air. You can cut that out, and this would have been a fine 5-minute thing from start to finish, where Becky is doing this sit-down interview with Michael Cole earlier in the day, and it gets interrupted by Liv Morgan, and they have their conversation exactly how it's played out, and then maybe Damage Control pull up on them, and you can essentially do exactly what happened here. You might have to stage it a little bit differently because, wrestling ring versus backstage, but nothing about this needed to take as long as it did, be formatted the way it did. What we ended up getting at the end of the segment, like everything after Liv came out, I thought was, it was fine pro wrestling TV. Yeah. She cut her promo on Becky about not being respected, which I think is fine. Yeah, it was good stuff. And Becky saying, you've done all these things, Money in the Bank, Women's Champion and everything, but you've never beaten me. And this is going to be the hill that Liv Morgan has to climb. I don't really think she will, but that's part of the story. I think that's fine. They do this. They get interrupted by Damage Control, who's here to talk about who runs Raw, which really wound you up watching it. And
because I watch this show every single week, and everyone talks about, we're the ones, we run Monday Night Raw. That's empty words. Shut up. It doesn't mean anything. You, the Judgment Day, no one runs. You know who runs Monday Night Raw? Adam Pearce in kayfabe, but Triple H in real life. I know who runs Monday Night Raw. Back it up.
You know who runs Monday Night War? You do. You do.
Number one, baby.
Yeah, so Damage Control come out, they say they run Raw, and then they surround the ring, and Becky and Liv kind of have their back-to-back ready to fight, And then Liv Morgan rolls out of the ring and leaves Becky high and dry.
I liked that. I thought that was a fun little
That's
moment.
good.
Yeah.
I enjoy that. Lyra Valkyria runs down, kind of on her way back. Is like, what are you doing? Gets in the ring, backs up Becky Lynch, damage control bail. A fine segment by the end, but this could have been heavily tweaked. Not a fan. Not a fan of the early going. Not a fan of Michael Cole. Nah. Sami Zayn is backstage and basically says that he is battling a personal and a professional issue at the same time and should work it out in a triple threat match at King and Queen of the Ring. Solid. Gives us direction. Lyra Valkyria then wrestled Dakota Kai in another first round match. This also didn't really have the crowd for it, which was disappointing. I didn't think that they were particularly smooth together. It was just kind of okay. Lyra's finish looked kind of soft. Didn't really land particularly impactfully. It didn't vibe with me. There were some smatterings of Lyra chants and such, so they wanted to get into it. Yeah. They're clearly doing things with Lyra Valkyria. They showed the video package earlier in the show. I still think they could be doing a lot more if this is your new women's star that you really want to push heavily. But they did more with this women's match than they did with the earlier one, but still not enough.
Yeah, so it was, again, it comes down to presentation. This is where I got kind of cross, because earlier on that promo package that they did, it was kind of a tale of two halves. On the one hand, they gave me an aura and mystique. On the other hand, they gave me her sort of sat there like, I'm so excited to be here on Monday Night Raw. I've been drafted and I can't believe it. Like a competition winner. Yeah. That was the energy she had. Like a little, it was kind of patronizing in a weird way. Then the match, she doesn't get an entrance. She comes and makes the save, and I appreciate making the save and standing next to Becky or whatever. It continues their history. As you said, could have been done in a backstage segment. Becky could have been like, hey, thanks for saving me. Go out there and kill it. And then Lyra gets this big entrance. I don't know. You could have done something like that. And then the match begins, and within seconds, I'm being told to check out. I'm being told by WWE, don't worry about what's going on in this match. Here's a clip of Planet of the Apes. Now, I love Planet of the Apes. I'm a massive fan of that franchise. I've seen the first 40 minutes of the new movie. It looks fantastic. I don't want to watch that instead of this match. And if you're going to have to do that, give it to me in the Chad Gable Bronson Reed match that we know doesn't actually matter. This is supposed to matter. Yeah. This is Lyra Valkyria's big debut. And I've talked about this a lot, and especially having to fight certain comments being like, females don't like wrestling. First of all, calling a woman a female in that context is so cringe. But secondly, the idea that women's wrestling is less than is one that is not inherent. It's given to us in the presentation.
Yes.
You wouldn't have done this during Dragunov's debut. So why are you doing it during Lyra Valkyria's debut?
It's an excellent point.
I just feel like there was a real missed opportunity here. I get that you want to make your money. I have no problem with the product integration. I have no problem with showing people that Planet of the Apes, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is coming out. It's going to be great. You're going to really enjoy it. Go to the movies. But not here when you're trying to achieve a breakout star of your women's division who I think is genuinely very good. And again, it's all a part of it. Does she have to do the promo segment? Or can you maybe rethink how she wants to say it? Remember when Candice LeRae was just a big fan of dreams?
Yeah.
Like, I believe in magic. God, fuck yourself. Like, Candice LeRae is the one who can batter people. Like, I don't know. There's a weird presentation issue that they have, and I would like them to get over it.
I agree, and I think a lot could still be done with this, women's side of the bracket. I think it's kind of wild. Shayna Baszler and Zelina Vega is a match I probably wouldn't have cut from this show because
I was reading. Apparently, they had a whole bunch of issues. Apparently, it wasn't part of the plan to cut them from the show, and then they did.
I don't believe that it was by any means, but I think this show would have benefited from that match.
I agree
because I think Shayna Baszler, maybe not in her main roster booking or anything, but I look at her and I see that's someone who has some form of credibility.
Oh my god! When she popped up on NXT, I popped through the roof. Like there was a segment with Natalya for ahead of the Underground, and she was in Lola Vice's corner, and Lola Vice said, "Here's my sort of second." Shayna Baszler's music hits, and something about Shayna Baszler in the NXT arena really sent me.
Yeah.
Again, it's presentation. Think about the way these women were presented in NXT versus the way they're being presented now. It's almost like there's an old quote that Ginger Rogers did everything Fred Astaire did, but backwards and in heels. And that's what they have to do on this roster. They, first of all, don't get to do everything that the men do. And when they do get to do them, they've got to face bollocks like this, and then I have to read comments from people saying no one cares about women. It's so irritating.
Yeah.
Because the reason you don't care about women is because of shit like this. Sorry, Mod Mother, I'm 12, but I feel like you're going to let me off.
Get the swear jar. Get it going. Yes, I mean, I completely agree.
Yeah.
Your points are completely sound and valid. It's disappointing. I don't know where Isla Dawn or Alba Fire are in this. I think they really should have been included in this just to kind of spruce up this lineup a little bit. I think Asuka being out really hurts, obviously, because I think we probably would have seen like an Io Asuka semifinal. Maybe.
Yeah, or even maybe the match with Lyra might have been a little bit more something.
It would
and that's
have been...
no disrespect to Dakota Kai. I think if this was a last minute thing that happened, then they've had to throw a match together quite quickly.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. So disappointing. Hopefully they can improve. We will see. And then the last thing we have to talk about is Kofi Kingston cutting a fantastic backstage promo where this is all pre-recorded, so there's edited bits kind of spliced in between where he's in the locker room. He's like sitting in a locker and he's talking about how the King of the Ring means everything to him because this was supposed to be Xavier Woods' King of the Ring. He was going to go back to back, become a 2-time King of the Ring winner, only the second person to ever do that. But he doesn't get to do that because of what Imperium did to him. They show clips of him getting his knee torn apart and everything. And he says he's got to win the King of the Ring now, because that might mean that he'll get to face Gunther in this tournament, get his revenge, and to do that, he has to put Rey Mysterio down like he's Kendrick or Drake. And you didn't need to bring this up. It's been a bad enough week for Toronto anyway. Losing everything these days. But I thought this was a fantastic little promo.
Yeah.
Made me believe in Kofi Kingston. Like, Kofi Kingston has been in a lot of these King of the Ring tournaments where maybe he goes around deep or something like that. You never really think he's going to win. I don't think he's going to win this one by any means, but he's got a stake in this.
Yeah.
The King of the Ring means something different to him than it means to any of the other people in this tournament.
Yeah.
And I think that is very important. I think that's very cool. And that makes me so much more invested in a potential semifinal match or quarterfinal match, I suppose it would be, with Gunther.
Yeah, and obviously because they have that, they've set that little bit up. That's quite nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so many steps to this tournament that I think now have a lot of payoff. I wish you had that in the women's tournament. But again, going back to the title of this video, of the best King of the Ring tournaments, none of the other ones have this.
Yeah.
You might get a rematch of a great match previous in a semifinal somewhere or something like that. But having the personal stakes of everybody meaning so much to them, like you see what Ricochet was saying on Twitter after the match, where he's fed up, he can't get it right. Oh my God. It means so much to win or lose matches in this tournament, and it means something to Kofi Kingston. I would have liked to have seen his match as well. It's a shame that we don't get to see it, but I cannot wait to presumably see him wrestle Gunther in the quarterfinals.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think, can't really add anything to that.
Yeah. And that was Raw, because after that was the main event, which we have already talked about, which gets a big ol' thumbs up. Like I said in my edited review, I gave this show a 5 out of 5 because you had Gunther and Sheamus and you had Ilya and Ricochet, and throw in Natty and Io Sky in there as well. And having matches of that caliber, having wrestling on a wrestling show, for so long, Raw was the show where wrestling went to die.
Yeah.
And now I feel like it's the work rate show.
I'm a big fan of like having both.
I love that.
I like to have wrestling like this mixed with segments. That's why my critique of the Becky segment is not a critique of the idea of having her on the show and doing segments. Same thing with Punk. I just do them differently.
Yeah.
You know, make them be more effective because I like having that balance. So for me, I would give this one a thumbs up, but not a very strong one because there was enough to bother me.
Yeah. And that's totally fair. Like, it wasn't a perfect show. It wasn't a well-rounded show even, I thought. But I'm someone who the most important thing in my wrestling is the wrestling, and it delivered for me. And so I give it 2 thumbs up, 5 stars, happy.
Mine is entrances.
That being said, we have some very special people to shout out, those being our $25 and above Pledgehammers over at WrestleTalk.com/Patreon. Nope, the other way around. Patreon.com/WrestleTalk. I don't have to do these on the SmackDown podcast. If you want to have your own custom wrestling nickname read out on a show just like this, make sure you go over to Patreon.com/WrestleTalk and subscribe at the $25 and above tier like these fine folks did. So a big shout out to the $100 man, CD Horver.
Yeah. The Bowling Brummy, Brett Linforth.
Yeah. Big Jiggy, Josh Martin. Yeah.
Double L, Liam Leonard.
Yeah. The Pinnacle of Success, Luke Kelly. Yeah.
The Mat Man, Matthew Allen. You can do that after every single one of them?
Of course.
Okay, fine.
I've been doing this for years.
Sure.
Yeah. Abominable, Michael Abbott. Yeah.
King of the Conquest, Stephen Mullen.
Yeah.
Stephen Mullenix.
Yeah. Par for the course, Zarjeth. Yeah.
Where there's a Will Campbell.
Yeah. The Machine Gun, Alex Anderson.
And the Roller Coaster, Robert Acosta.
Yeah. Thank you so much to all of our Pledgehammers, but of course the ones at the $25 and above tier. You can get your own custom wrestling nickname read out on a show just like this. This is your final call, ding, 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 for your Ultrachats. We are going to be reading out the last remaining Ultrachats here on the show, and we will be checking, of course, what you thought of this show in our poll in the chat. So make sure you get your votes in. Chris Deaton says, Gunther Sheamus was insane and looking forward to Gunther Ilya. Wish it was on the PLE as the final instead of a semi-final, but will be incredible either way. Also, really glad that they are doing more tournaments now. They are the best.
Yeah, I think it'll be a great main event overall. I think it would be great on the pay-per-view as well.
Yeah. I completely agree. All of the above.
To get what I want from this match, I don't want it to be given the time constraints of having to shoehorn it in on an otherwise stacked pay-per-view.
Right.
You know? Give it half an hour.
Yeah.
On Raw.
This should be presented as something very important. Yeah. Main event of Raw, go through several commercial breaks, the whole deal. Grand presentation, and I'm sure it'll get it. The Black Prince says, hey guys, what a weekend, eh? I've just watched Backlash and I've heard all the hatred that the ref got for the tag match. Having refed on shows before, go BWR, I feel his pain. There wasn't a tag and he had to make the call. The hatred is unfair.
Hate is a very strong word.
Yeah.
I will say. I mean, I get what you mean in this context. I think it was a fumble. I said it on the review. I think it was a fumble. I think it disrupted the flow of the match. Call an audible. I get that you're told to do this as a shoot. The ref's job is incredibly hard, but it really disrupted the flow of the match. And it was bad form.
I agree. Maybe some nerd out there on Twitter would be like, actually, she wasn't a legal man. You counted the pin. No one cares.
In the moment, I didn't notice.
Nobody cares. Nobody notices when it's happening. No one cares.
Yeah.
Swerve in Our Glory won by pinning the illegal man in AEW, and they forgot about it the next week because it's cool.
Yeah.
No one cares. It ruined a large chunk of the match.
It took them a long time to get back into it, and they did, to their credit. But then again, it was also following up by Asuka then making a tag.
That is my problem.
So again, does it matter or does it not? But to your point, as someone who has refereed a match, it is a difficult job.
Yes,
it is a thankless job in many ways. If you do your job the best, I don't notice you're there. So that part of it is true as well.
100%. That is my major problem with it. If you're gonna ruin what's going on here, at least be consistent with it. At least just tell Asuka, you in the ring now, as opposed to just going like, oh, well, never mind. Just tag. Okay. Never forget I said anything.
It was a mess.
It was a mess.
And I bet he feels really bad about it.
I'm sure he does.
It's not helpful to have guys in studios whinging. I get it. He probably we can't make him feel worse than he already does, I imagine.
Gale 4 says, hiya, fellas. Missed out on the Backlash podcast, so I wanted to ask it today. How much of a change in how Jey Uso is presented needs to change to get him to click? I personally think it's his very restrictive moveset and weak finishers that let me down often. I think those are like kind of buzzwordy ways of saying what the problem is. It's just I think he needs to be better in the ring.
Turn up the dial and the intensity for me in a big way. I think it's almost like bah, rather than bah. Do you know what I mean? And it's the same thing I thought in the Zoey Stark Ivy Nile match. Just really connect the moves. Don't leave too much space in between them. And I think he often does leave a lot of space in between them.
I don't know if they would have taught you this at wrestling school. They taught me this at wrestling school. The idea of like, if you hold the rope, the tension in the rope, you can walk back and forth and work cooperatively with each other, but the rope has to stay tense.
Yeah.
It needs to look real, because if all of a sudden we lock up and we're both just kind of like a little bit limp with it and everything, that is where, you know, the disconnect comes from, because then it's very clear you're working together and everything. A lot of Jey Uso's offense is kind of like that.
Well, I also
just
think
kind of soft.
There's something maybe in the fact that he was a tag wrestler for so long, and the work that he did, one of the best, by the way. Like, I don't want to undersell him in any way. I think a lot of the work, there were three other men around him. Two other men being his tag team partner and his other opponent, kind of thing, to allow a bit more. I thought you meant
the third Uso.
So he could do a lot. Well, that would be solo. He could do a lot more of the, like, you know.
Yeah.
Whereas I think he's still doing these moves, but Jimmy's not there to do a move before he lands it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think there's maybe something in that. So I think it's just dial up the intensity a little bit and maybe bring the movements down. Yeah, tense it up is a lot more.
Yeah. Also, the yeet thing.
Hey, it works. Shut up. It's over.
I don't
look a gift yeet in the mouth.
I don't care. Like, you could have it be a thing, 100%. Have a catchphrase. It has. I saw the term used, Flanderized him, where it's reduced him to a one-word catchphrase, as opposed to the major character he was coming out of the summer last year.
I get you. And yet I can't help but look at that. I mean, they showed it on the show, the Cleveland.
I think this is great.
Yeah.
You know, I think
there's more to him than just yeet.
Sure, but I do think people weren't wrong for looking at the Uso versus Uso match as being like, oh, this is yeet versus no yeet. I'd be like, is this what we've gotten to?
I get you. That's a fair.
That's more what I mean by it. Blake Whitehouse says, as great as R-Truth is, something about his character just feels off to me. In short bursts, he's great. In longer segments, though, he feels like a watered-down and less offensive version of the Eugene character. I just don't get what they're going for. I mean, yeah, you kind of have to skirt around this topic, but in some form or another, he's nuts.
Yeah, I think it's not... I don't think the Eugene... comparison is quite fair, but it is one of those of like, is he just crazy? He's just a crazy person. It doesn't all. Sometimes it lands for me. Live, Laugh, Love remains what, like, I laughed very hard at that.
Every once in a while it hits.
Yeah,
the segment he did with Brock Lesnar ahead of the Royal Rumble, where he thought Paul was going to be in it and he had Brock cracking up on the other side, I thought it was fantastic.
I smiled when he tried to do a hot tag at WrestleMania. Look, every now and again it's quite funny.
Yeah.
But every other now and again it doesn't work.
Yeah. CJ Lilly is here to say, it's amazing how quick things can change. As after Backlash, I was very excited for the Wyatt 6, but after PWI leak that shows Alexa isn't part of it, I couldn't care less. And I feel that the group is lower mid-card at best without her and Braun in there. If she's not in the group, how would you bring her back, if at all? As we know, there's not a lot of the IWC that would like to there's a lot of the IWC that would like to forget she exists, as she don't want to be the goddess anymore, and she can't be the jobber she was before she left. So is this it for Alexa?
Alexa Bliss had a baby not that long ago. She can come out whenever the goddamn hell she wants. Don't put a time frame on that. Yeah. Also, if you are not into the idea of the White, let the White 6 debut before you decide you're not into it.
Honest to goodness,
I think this has far more to do with your fandom of Alexa than it has to do with the White 6. I think the White 6, we do have a habit as wrestling fans of going 2 or 3 steps ahead. Let's let them get out and let's see what's going to crack on before we have any strong feelings about it either way.
Yeah, I mean, I know this is sort of a bit on this show, but, like, come on, bro. Like, I do not see anybody ever talk about Alexa Bliss. Like, at the moment, she's having a kid.
big
otherwise occupied.
Yeah.
You know, like, she wants to come back. She'll come back when she does.
Yeah.
She'll get a big response. That'll be that.
Yeah.
The Raw or any of these programs or groups or nothing do not live and die with the absence or lack thereof of Alexa Bliss.
Or of anyone. Like, Carmella's the same thing.
Yeah.
When having a baby, man, it's a big old thing. So she can do it whenever she wants.
Yeah. Anywho, Aiden says, hi guys, I said it last week and I will stand by it. Becky versus Liv now is a bad idea. If Liv wins, you've wasted Becky's title reign. If Becky wins, you've had Becky beat Liv again. Should have saved this match for SummerSlam, has DQ written all over it. IMO.
I kind of see where you're going with that.
I kind of agree.
Yeah.
I probably would have put Liv in the tournament.
Yeah. That's a really, especially if you're losing a couple of stars. Yes. You are dead right. That's exactly how you say it, because this is a very real issue. That's how you keep them separate.
Yeah. And if you have people saying she hasn't earned a title shot, she'll be like, you know what? You all wanted to disrespect me. I'm going to go in this tournament and I'm going to win it.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to come after you and that title and you will not be able to deny me.
Yeah, you've sold me on it.
Yeah.
Whoopsie.
Kevin says, I think the most interesting thing about the Punk promo is when he said off mic, don't make me come to Glasgow or I'll beat your ass or something. So maybe dropping a hint that they'll have a match at Clash at the Castle. If they're both healthy, like...
Let's do it. Let's just do it.
I like where he says, I'm going to pop out of a bowl of haggis and beat your ass or something.
That is the main event of Clash I want to see. I've kind of set my heart on it a little bit.
Yeah. If they're both healthy, absolutely do it. Booking Like a Mark says, incredible episode of Raw last night. I was proud to see it live. Oh, very nice. How did the crowd sound on TV? It was a great use of the 3 hours, letting matches breathe, but I'm worried about the match quality on SmackDown when each match will have less time. I am interested to see how an equal number of matches will play out in 2 hours of wrestling time. I don't think really any of them are going to go the length of the main event and the Ilya Dragunov match, which I think will help.
I don't think they have the stakes as the Raw ones.
It's
but
much less enticing.
There is something in... There are a few more episodes of SmackDown. You can make the we'll see, I suppose.
Yeah.
But yeah.
As far as the crowd goes, I think when they were into things, it really felt like they were into it.
It did.
And other bits of the show just weren't as hot, and I don't think really the crowd is to blame for that.
Yeah.
So a good crowd, I would say. Your boy Ed Games says, hey lads, amazing Raw last night. 2 certified TV matches of the year and an amazing tournament. Question, if Drew wasn't pulled due to injury, would he have beaten Finn or would Punk ruin it? I'm dreaming about that Drew-Ilya match right now. I think he probably would have won.
Yeah, I don't know. I've thought about that. I can't decide.
I think it would have been one where it could have gone either way.
Yeah.
You know, because you have an out where Punk could ruin it for him and allow Finn to go on. But likewise, Drew feels like he's kind of in that European tough guy, hard as nails wrestling section of the roster where a match between him and Dragunov, that's absolutely tasty. Could go either way. I don't know. Space Viking says, WWE really had the audacity to give us a wrestling show during the NBA playoffs. It's a new era. I saw so many people that I would have really appreciated the opinions of in the moment till I'd be like, wow, look at how great that match was. Watching the Knicks. The Knicks. How about them Knicks? And Malton Deister says, hey guys, just wondering, at this point, who do you think is the front runner to win the men and women's rumbles? My picks are Gunther, and for the women, I think Liv possibly, or Jade. Thoughts? It's so far away. I have no idea.
Yeah, I it's one of my least favorite things is booking it way far ahead. I don't know, because CM Punk was an AEW star this time last year.
He hadn't even come back to Collision yet.
Yeah. So let's see where we go.
Yeah, it could well be. Otherwise, Roman.
Yeah, I high key like the idea of a Roman return.
You know, Roman, I think, could do it, maybe. Yeah. I don't know, because they want to do their Roman and Rock match, I'm sure. But Roman's only won 1 Rumble, and I think that
it didn't go well for him.
You know, it did. You know, I'm sure they want some nice Royal Rumble winning clips to air in highlight packages when he eventually goes in the Hall of Fame and all that good stuff. And Cody James has just tipped $5 with no message. So thank you very much. We appreciate that greatly. I'm going to check the poll.
You have to end it yourself, so I'll just vamp for this bit.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Mods. This was a long one, but then also we had to start late because there was an infiltration in the studio. Thank you so much for watching. What a show it's been, eh?
87% thumbs up, 10% in the middle, only 2/3% thumbs down.
That's about where I'm at. I appreciate that breakdown.
Yeah. I agree. Very good show. And I thank you very much, Luke, for not being able to make it into work today so that I could review it. That being said, we will be back with our review of AEW Dynamite on Thursday, so make sure you check that out. Make sure you're subscribed to the WrestleTalk Podcast channel and ring that bell so you stay notified whenever we go live. I have been Tempest, that has been Dan, and that was the best goddamn opening of the King of the Ring ever!